Product teams create features that never launch some of the time, and project teams deliver on time but miss the market. Sound familiar? This kind of difference between product and project perspectives? Today we're tackling that costly disconnect between product and project management, a divide that's holding back innovation in organizations everywhere. You'll discover how to overcome the three biggest obstacles of this and a proven framework for turning friction into fusion. Joining us are Leah Huff and Jill Diffendal from the Project Management Institute, who've not only researched this product-project partnership, but are actively implementing these principles to transform how PMI delivers value. Leah brings 14 years of experience spanning operations, program, and product management, currently serving as Senior Product Operations Manager at PMI. Jill, with over 20 years in content development and strategic communications, manages thought leadership research that's reshaping how we think about project success. If you're listening to our discussion and would rather watch it, simply go to our YouTube channel, search for Product Mastery Now on YouTube. Let's jump in and learn more about how to better integrate product and project management concepts. And if you say product and project too quickly, it's hard to hear the difference. We'll be talking about both concepts. We'll get to that right after this.
How can you unlock your full potential as a product manager? We're sharing the product management insights you need. They are based on the 7 research-backed knowledge areas for product mastery. You'll learn to create products customers love, enhance your influence, and elevate your career. Welcome to Product Mastery Now, hosted by Dr. Chad McAllister, product management professor, practitioner, and your guide.
Leah and Jill, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Happy to be here. Thank you, Chad.
I'm really excited you both are. This is a conversation I like to have at times. Not that we have had one about these specific topics, but how does project management relate to product management? And just by way of background briefly, originally I was an electrical engineer. I moved into leading software teams along the way and had to learn a lot about project management because of that. And I got involved with PMI. That was my helper to learn a lot of things, earn the PMP certification with that, and was still running into things our software team was encountering that I didn't really have answers for yet, and had to go figure that out because we were doing product work, right? And we had to do customer research, and at the time PMI didn't really talk about that a lot, at least that I was aware of. And the project managers I interacted with through the local PMI chapter, largely we were focused on here's the requirements that are given to you, execute on requirements, try to complete things in schedule, in cost, in scope, and you've done a good job. And sometimes that resulted in not actually creating the desired value for customers, right? And so that's what caused me to get into product management and go searching for that information, which led me to the Product Development and Management Association, and that's where I got to see both of you present on your research that you've done on this topic, and that was fantastic. That's a really good organization for people involved in product. If you don't know about it, please go to pdma.org. But let's get into your research, and a number stuck out to me that I thought was interesting. You shared in your presentation that 79% of product managers have worked as project managers. Can you just give us a sense of the background of that research and kind of what caused you to look into this relationship between project and product management?
Sure, absolutely. Thank you so much, Chad. And totally agree, as someone who has had to speak about this research a number of times, having to say project and product and being very specific about which one is which does trip you up very often. But so PMI's interest in product management, while the research we released in May of 2025 is relatively new, we have in fact been looking at the product management space for quite some time because we know so many people in the PMI community are interested in product management, are coming from product management, or want to move into product management. And so we finally got to the point of seeing that growing within our community. As you mentioned, you got a PMP. There are a lot of people in the PMI ecosystem who have a PMP who identify as product managers. So we absolutely know that's the case. And so we finally thought it was time to actually do some of our own research on this to understand what does that actually look like? How big is the overlap? What are we talking about here, so that we can better serve our project management community, but also understand, to your experience as well, there are people in the product community who need project management skills, who are feeling that in their everyday. And so how could we also serve them? PMI doesn't just serve project managers, we serve people who need project management skills. And so
Sure.
we started out by conducting some research where we went to about nearly 700 each of product and project managers and asked them both questions about what they do. And so that's where that 79% number comes from. We asked product managers, have you ever worked in project management before? And we were really astounded that 79% of them said yes. The other thing we know is from separate research we did, our Maximizing Project Success research, where we were looking at what drives successful projects. We had almost 10,000 respondents to that survey, and we asked them, what is your most recent project? And it was 39%, so almost 40%, or 2/5, said, our last project was a product development project. And so we know so many project managers are working on products, and we know a lot of product managers have experience in project management. And so it just seemed a natural fit. Coupled with the idea that we know organizations are moving in this direction as well, it finally became an obvious time for PMI to really move more fully into this space and say, okay, how can we serve this overlap community that needs project management skills and needs to understand one another?
Fantastic. Thanks for a little bit of background on that, Jill. It's interesting to me in my own journey in my career, and as I have interviewed other people on this topic, there's positions where project management is so very different than product management, and product management is so very different than project, or there's a lot of overlap between these, right? And I was encouraged as a product person when I did discover the project side of things. The PMI describes the purpose of project management is to create a product or service, right? And so there's good connections. And probably maybe because of my journey was heavy into project management first, I just see the tools applying really well to what we do in product, right? We need to be creative and innovative to create value for the customer, but we also have to execute, and we have to have mechanisms, these tools that I think are useful from project management to do that. Leah, could you help compare and contrast this a little bit, the difference between, or maybe similarities, right, between project and product managers?
Absolutely. So I think that when we think about product and project managers, we have this idea, and we heard this and we see this in conversations, that there's totally different things, right, Chad? You were just talking about that. There's this perception of a division, and really there is so much overlap while also keeping our unique skills. And as somebody that is a product person who has their PMP, I deal with this on a daily basis. So we know that our product managers think about what will create the most value for our customer, right? Why are we creating this feature? What do we need to do with it? Why do we need to get it out to market? And the project manager is really thinking about, how do we ensure that this work that we're doing delivers value that's worth the effort and investment? So great, we know this is going to deliver value to our customer, but is it worth it? Is the value worth it? And people think about product, right? And product managers and product professionals thinking about their strategy and vision and being customer centric and defining success in doing prioritization and having this external focus, where on the flip side, people think project, right? Planning and execution, the iron triangle, making sure that we think about risk, making sure that we think about the process and the structure, and really having stakeholder alignment, that internal focus. But at the end of the day, both groups are thinking about our outcome delivery, right? How are we getting the best thing to market that's worth the effort that we're doing? They want it to be successful. So there's this shared ownership between the two roles of success, right? That if we both own it, product and project together, that better collaboration leads to better outcomes. And we also think about strategic alignment, and it might look a little different, right? My idea of success as a product person might look a little different for the idea of success for a project person, but at the end of the day, we both need to be in alignment to own that shared success. One of the things that I think is really interesting that we need to talk more about is this risk management visibility. So how, that is in the forefront of project. And I truly believe that as product individuals, we also think about it, but we just don't maybe use the same language, or we might not use the same tools to manage risk. And I think that is an area of opportunity where we can really learn from each other on how to manage risk, because risk happens whether it's a project or a product. There's always risk associated with it, right? And I think both also have a really strong overlap in it being adaptable and having those change management skills. Again, they might be looking a little bit different on what they're being adaptable on, or what they might be managing from a change perspective, but they both need those skills and to work together to be able to move that product or project forward.
Really good. I agree. I see that overlap too, right? And I usually just frame it as project management provides a set of concepts, tools, disciplines that are useful for us in the world of product. And when I've been on projects where we're creating a new product and I don't have to do the project management stuff because there's a project manager there, I love that. That simplifies my life and is a good thing. You talked about alignment, and I think this is a key issue, is about alignment on what maybe success is. And traditionally, the thought was, like when I did my PhD work, I did a deep dive into requirements engineering. And at that time, IEEE, a little before this, might have been like in the 80s, I think they had the official definition of success of a project was you meet the letter of the requirements, right? You respond to the requirements. And then that evolved more into a perspective of, well, you have to create the value that the customer was expecting, kind of implying we might get the requirements wrong, and we have to figure that out along the way, right? Which I think we all kind of appreciate.
Yep.
But I suspect that's an alignment issue, maybe between some project and product people. What kind of alignment issues do you think of, Leah, that you've seen in practice or through research or anything else?
Absolutely. So I think one key thing to think about when you say that piece around success and alignment, who is that alignment with? So success for the product person is going to be success with the customer. And from a project perspective, that success may be internal, but at the end, they both need to work. And I think that goes to the example that we were talking about at the conference, where we, as a product person, we were developing this course. So I'm on the learning team at PMI. We develop asynchronous courses for people to take. And we were developing this course. We'd done all this research. It was truly grounded in research. We had our product vision. We were a third of the way through development. And then we got internal feedback from important stakeholders that totally derailed everything. And I think that's where alignment, the strength of having that alignment and be able to bring those two skill sets together really helped us succeed to get the product out on time, right? So we hit our timeline, but it was still the right product for the market at that time. So we didn't have to sacrifice anything, but what we had to do was use both of those skill sets to better align as we were going forward, to make sure that we were still honoring our research and the vision that we had, but also honoring the ask and the top-down vision that was coming from our leadership team.
Okay. So that sounds like an important conversation to have together, right? Between
Yep.
product and project manager.
Absolutely.
What does success look like? Who are the stakeholders that we are most accountable to?
Correct.
How do we make this a win for everyone involved?
Yeah. Is it worth the effort that we're going to put in, right? Because we're going to put in a lot of effort to get this product or project out the door.
One of the small things that annoys me a lot is project management has been around for a long time, right? And it's PM. And then product management comes along, and we can trace its roots back to like the 1930s, but it developed really this century as a known thing among people, among roles. And I don't know why the community adopted PM. And I just find it confusing, because I'll have senior leaders send me an email and say, hey, I need some help with PM things. And I know about both. And I'm like, I don't know what you're asking about, right? So whenever I always write product management as P small case DM,
Yes.
to be clear, and I wish there was a standard that we could all get on board with. Does this pop up for you guys?
It absolutely does.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'll let Jill answer that one.
Yeah. I will say the official PMI style guide does not allow us to say PM. We always say project manager or product manager, but frankly, for internal shorthand, we do use the P lowercase d M for product management.
I'm not the only one then. I'm so happy.
No, it is something that definitely, it gets around. People definitely use it.
Maybe we can start it here and get more product people to recognize that this is confusing as well. Okay, another question for you that came up at your session that you did at the conference, that you shared organizations are making a shift to be more product-led. I've seen this through the work that I do, but I guess I've never really thought about this as maybe standing out in contrast in some way, a relationship to project management. Can you talk about what's going on there, more organizations being product-led, and how you see that relevant to project management?
Sure, absolutely. And this is actually kind of historically one of the first things that we started hearing that led us to really start diving deeper and deeper into product and project as a relationship is PMI works with a number of organizational customers. We have relationships with many large organizations that have project functions. And what we were hearing from some of them was my leadership, our PMO leaders, our project leaders within organizations were coming to us and saying, my leadership at my organization wants me to move to a product operating model. What does that mean? And how do I talk to them about the difference between a project-led operating model and a product-led operating model? And so we started having these conversations and understanding really it's about what is the driving force in the organization? Is it the product? Are you an organization that is generating products that you are constantly maintaining, or are you an organization that operates based on projects? And at the end of the day, there's not really an either or, because I think a lot of organizations do work, and I know we throw this term around for a lot of things, but work in a hybrid approach where there are some things that are project-led and some things that are product-led. But interestingly, we had a conversation at the PDMA conference with someone from an organization that is a consumer products organization, and this person was telling us that they have a project-led operating model. And the challenge there is that they start a project to create a new product or to update an existing product. But then once that development work is done and the product launches, there's no one who stewards that project or that product beyond the end of the project. And so it just sort of floats out there until something happens either in the external or internal environment that says we need a new version of this product, or we need to sunset this product, or whatever it is. And then they spin up another project team to do that work. But there's no one owning it in those gaps in between. And so I think those challenges are clear that a project is meant to have an end, but a product theoretically has a much longer lifespan. And so you need to orient your operating structure around being able to maintain that. Instead of spinning up project teams where you're pulling in people cross-functionally, product teams are more long-lasting and will own that product throughout its life cycle and be the ones who are constantly checking up on it. How is it doing in the marketplace? What are the KPIs that we're measuring around this project or product? How are we making sure it continues to deliver value to the customer? And then the project teams are still coming in when activity needs to happen to help run those specific activities. But the product team is a longstanding team that operates and owns that product over its life cycle. There are also, beyond those structural differences, there are also funding differences. I think there's some cultural value differences as well in terms of how you think about and what your organization does and how it's driving value to the customer. But I think that customer centricity is core to that approach in terms of culture. But so some of it's a governance and an organizational structure issue. Some of it is a teams issue and how those teams exist. Do they operate more within functional silos? Are they these cross-functional, long-standing teams? All of that contributes. And what we saw as we were exploring this in some of the research the desk research that we did to help us understand what kinds of questions we want to go out and ask in our own survey, we found that many more organizations today are hiring chief product officers. I think like a threefold increase over the last decade. And so we're seeing this increase in a C-suite led product function. What does that mean? And we certainly see, while project management has been around for quite some time, we definitely see product as a C-suite led function within the organization, where we see far fewer chief project officers.
Okay, yeah, so a big change certainly in the visibility at that C-suite for such things. That's a great conversation that you had with that person at the conference,
Yeah.
right? I tend to think of organizations, and I think I'm going to update this now based on what you just said, but I tend to think of organizations largely as ops and projects. Operations are the ongoing, continuous thing. We make widgets, and we have a capability to keep making our widgets all the time. And projects are the thing that, as you said, starts and stops and has some specific objectives we're trying to accomplish. And I see product fitting into both camps, but looking at it more through a product lens, kind of, we have a focus here for a point of time, and it certainly does continue on. There's another tension that I've seen come up sometimes in organizations, which is because of the, let's say, bureaucracy involved in getting projects started. Once there's that mechanism in place, they change in ways like, hey, we have this thing that was supposed to start off getting this other product launched. That thing got killed. We're not doing that anymore, but we got this project mechanism here, and it's kind of related to this new thing we want to do, so we're just going to turn it into that. It seems like some projects evolve in a way that was never intended because they're trying to follow a product, but they don't really have the structure to do that. I don't know if you've come across this or not, or if I completely confused you by what I said.
No, I think to us, that's a lot of where agility comes in. Obviously, one of the interesting things that I think we really see a lot of at the intersection between project and product is agile practices. And so that idea that you may be building something, or you have a sort of goal in mind, but you don't know how you're going to get there, that's where agile comes in, where you can kind of learn quickly, experiment, stop intermittently, see how successful you're being, see are you getting close to where you're trying to go, and then consistently changing course. And so I think that's one of the things, and we found in our research that both project and product managers are frequently using agile practices because there is that often need to say, we know what we're roughly trying to do, but we don't know exactly how we're going to get there. So how do we run this operation, this project or product, to be able to actually move closer to that without knowing all of the requirements, all of the specific outcomes up front.
Okay. Which I guess is, yeah, go ahead, Leah.
I was just going to say, can I add something here? I know I'm
Yeah.
like interrupting the flow. Okay. So I had an opportunity when we were at PDMA to sit through the sessions. And I actually sat through a very interesting session about an organization that is kind of flipping it on its head, their operating model. So they're keeping product owners. So product owners are going to be that long-term life cycle. They're going to make sure that whatever feature is getting released, they're going to follow it, maintain it, etc. And then they're taking and swarming up a function that is a blend of program managers, so think product managers, right? And product operation people. So the product operation people are going to handle the tools and how we're going to build it and making sure that we're all building it correctly. And the program managers are handling from research to project end, right? Go to market, where it then would go back to the product owners to maintain until it was ready to be sunsetted, retired, or to be updated again. And I think that is a really interesting model, and I'm very curious to see how it plays out for that organization, because that is like a true blend of all three when you think about it, right? Project, product, and operations all together at one, and they're
right.
all working in lockstep together. So I'm very curious to see how that plays out.
Right, yeah. I think my simplified view of ops and product is probably leaving out, ops and project is probably leaving out that emphasis on product as well. So it's interesting that you added that as an example, because I wanted to follow up on this governance issue, which that kind of was trying to tackle that a little bit. In the project management world, we saw the rise of the project management office, the PMO, and it sounds like they might be falling out of favor for a little bit, like many things go through the cycle. You may have another perspective on this, but they were a big thing maybe in the 90s or early 2000s. And then just recently, in maybe the last 5 years, the idea of product operations has come about as a governance tool, and that was talked about some at the conference as well by one of the speakers, which sounds like what you're kind of getting to there, Leah, in terms of governance for the product-led organization, we're trying to instill the discipline, just like a PMO was trying to elevate our project management discipline and maturity in the organization. Product governance is trying to do that from a product perspective and help all the product people use the same tools, help the same reporting go to all the stakeholders so it's easier for people to get used to it and more efficient, and create more discipline for what we're doing with the product sort of things. Any thoughts on that governance change that's taking place that you've seen? I don't know if it showed up in the research or not.
So we didn't specifically ask about this in the research, but we have done plenty of research on PMOs. Obviously, that is a huge piece of project management in many organizations. Interestingly, we see PMOs kind of going through cycles, and there's a lot of organizations will spin up a PMO. It will exist for, I think the average life cycle is around 4 years, and then they'll start saying, oh, this is a cost center, maybe we need to get rid of it, and then they get rid of it, and then they realize, oh, wait, we actually kind of needed some of that function. Let's build it again. And so one of the things PMI is trying to do is help organizations and PMOs understand, like, what is the value we're all trying to deliver here. One of the things we've seen in our PMO research is that some PMOs are moving towards what they're calling a value management office or a value delivery office. And I think some of those are looking at both project and product in terms of, it's not about what is the function, it's about what is the outcome. How are we delivering value to our customers? And how can we look at that across the board as an entire value portfolio? There's a product portfolio, there's a project portfolio. How are we uniting those two into what is actually delivering value to the customer? Interestingly, separately, PMI is looking at a lot of different aspects of organizational function. And one of the other things we're talking about a lot right now is enterprise agility. And I see that as this idea of, how is the organization delivering value? One of our sort of experts in this field said, wouldn't it be great if you looked at everything your organization did and said, does this deliver value or not? And if it doesn't, you stop doing it. And that to me is what this governance really needs to do, both on the project and product side, is say, are we delivering value with this project or product? If yes, let's make sure it has the resources it needs. Let's make sure the people who are running it understand what the best practices are, have the tools in their toolbox to be able to choose the right practices to manage this. And then if it's not delivering value, let's get rid of it. Or can we get to a place, to your point about bureaucracy of starting things up, can we get to a place where we can better identify in the beginning when somebody brings something to us, is this going to contribute to value? And that's how we make the decisions of what we stand up and what we don't.
Yeah, I like the language that you've both been using a lot, and this emphasis on value creation, right? And seeing project management really moving towards that. I think this gets us on the same page with product people quite a bit. I may have this wrong. I think it was Peter Drucker in Search of Excellence that talked about an organization only has two things that create value: the marketing and the product, and everything else is a waste. And it sounds like this enterprise agility is at least recognizing that we should focus on what is creating value and put our energy there. When it comes to these two roles kind of working together, we talked a little bit earlier about, sounds like having maybe a conversation on what does success mean to us and what does that look like, and does that differ depending on the stakeholders? Are there other obstacles to really integrating product and project management and being successful with that, and any tips you have to offer?
Absolutely. So first of all, I think the biggest thing that we're all talking about but haven't said is this blurred boundaries and unclear ownership, right? Especially in organizations where maybe they only have project teams or only have product teams, and they're asking the teams to take on new skills, or the two teams are coming together and they've never done that before. I think that is one of the biggest obstacles. We've encountered it, right? We've encountered it where we have an EPMO that comes in and supports a product development process for us, and we're like, wait, is that my role? Is that your role? Where do we what do I do? What do you do? What do we do together type deal, right? I think that there's obstacles on conflicting view on what the scope is going to be for the product and the project, the time-bound project that we're having. What can we get done in the time frame that we have? Where are we willing to give and take? And there's two different viewpoints on that a lot of times when you're sitting in a product role versus a project role. We know that a lot of times project professionals have their process, right? And we have a way that we do things. And sometimes that flows with product and sometimes it doesn't. And how are you as two teams overcoming that together? And maybe that's doing things like we're going to have a project charter, but we're going to also do daily coordination meetings because that's what works for both teams. And then siloed planning happens in every organization. I actually think it doesn't matter if you're product, project, marketing, finance, wherever, silos happen. And how are we breaking down those silos? How are we having those conversations? How are we bringing people like the project professionals to the table at the beginning of product development, not just when we need them to manage the development process for us? And then you hit it right on the head, Chad, with competing success metrics. If we're not sitting down and talking to each other and saying, what does success look like? We're going to always be in conflict because what I want is going to be different than what you want. So what can we do about it, right? It's all about having the conversation, sitting down at the table and saying, what do you do? What does your day look like? What tools do you use? How can I learn those tools, right? It's sitting down and taking a learning and saying, I'm a product professional that knows nothing about project management. What does PMI have? Or vice versa. I'm a project professional that doesn't know anything about product management. Does PDMA have something that I can take a look at and understand better? It's making sure that we're aligned on tools, and that's where that operations piece comes in, right? Are we all using the same tools, the same language, in the same cadence? And then making sure that we have our plans in place and we're having the same rhythm with our plans and our communication cadence. And then again, just backed conversations. We're all human. Being human is so hard. Let's not make it harder by not talking to each other and just assuming that the other person's going to do their job with no other communication, because we're all going to fail in that when that happens.
Right. I like the tips there. The wrap up for me on that I'm taking away is have that conversation, have it early on, get the product and project people together at the start of the new activity, and talk with each other about what you do and what tools you use. I think there's just a lot of new things come out about, why are you using those tools, and aligning on those tools is helpful.
Absolutely.
It's interesting to me. I teach, although most of my work is in product innovation, product management, when I'm teaching university courses, I do teach a project management for information technology professionals in the graduate school at Purdue University. And one of the students in there this term that has a lot of experience in agile project management and is annoyed that we're not using Jira as our tool for learning concepts. And I'm like, but it's just a tool, and learning the concepts is the key thing here. And if Jira would give us their tool for free, I'd be glad to use it, but that hasn't happened yet. So if anyone's listening from Jira, reach out to me. Purdue graduate class would love to be using your stuff. But that is a way of talking and understanding each other better, I think, is when we do talk about the tools we use and why we're using them, right? And sometimes we're very passionate about specific positions because it means more to us in terms of the process behind it and how we think about what we're approaching.
Yeah, and I think that what I have found having to have both hats on is when I have to sit down and teach somebody my process or my tool, I learn so much more. I learn where it's broken. I learn where it doesn't make sense. I learn on ways to improve it. So while I'm teaching them, I am getting just as much out of that conversation.
Yep. That's very good. Fantastic. I really have enjoyed our discussion about this interaction and see a lot of complementary things between them, right? That we need to be using. Execution is important in innovation for sure, in product management, and we need to be using the tools of project management, and having people that are skilled and disciplined in project management is very helpful to our product work. Is there anything that we did cover that you want to make sure we hit on?
No, I think I really appreciate the interest coming from both the project and the product community of like, how do we understand each other better? Just to dovetail a little bit on the conversation we're just having, one of the biggest things that surfaced in our research, and especially from talking to project and product managers, the biggest pain point is a handoff. When you just say, okay, I'm done my part, here you go, now you take it, and there's no other conversation. And so if you feel like what you're doing is a handoff, you probably need to stop and rethink that. That's probably the biggest thing any team can do to ensure is stop and have the conversation instead of just oh, I've submitted the Jira ticket, it's now gone, or the Monday.com ticket or whatever, it's now gone to the other team. I wash my hands of it. Go have that conversation.
Yeah, that's a very good
Yep.
point. Appreciate you bringing it up, Jill.
Yeah.
Leah, I'm sure you underscore that as well.
Yeah.
The handoffs is where most problems tend to occur and things get dropped. So thanks for the great information. We do like innovation quotes. I'm going to ask you for yours in just a moment. Also, I want to let everyone know I often sponsor this podcast myself, have been for quite a while, on the training that I do for organizations. I use a system I created called the Rapid Product Mastery Experience, the RPM experience. And we dive into 7 buckets of knowledge, 7 knowledge areas. These are research-backed areas. They actually do come out of PDMA, which is the conference that we were together at. They've been researching the space since 1976 and have contributed a lot to product management, product innovation. And these are the things that really level up, skill up individual product managers and product teams. And today I'd like to speak specifically to product VPs and CPOs. This is a great way to get your product professionals on the same page together, to build some trust with each other, let them collaborate in a way that they hardly ever do, and really get grounded in these 7 areas, together hundreds of concepts and processes and tools that they should be aware of to really be professionals at their work. It's a great way to skill them up and for you to see higher performance out of those people. I'm having the pleasure right now of doing 2 new groups that I facilitate for an organization. Already did 2 for them before, and they're just seeing value in how this is helping them grow and how they've been able as product people return revenue to the bottom line and return value to the organization because of what they learned and some of the blind spots that they discovered that they had through this training as well. And it's really helping them skill up and work better together. And they enjoy it as well, which is a great thing. So if you want to show some care and love to your product people and help them skill up too and improve, go check that out. It's the RPM experience. You will find information at productmasterynow.com/RPM. On to innovation quotes. You 2 are going to have to choose who goes first.
I can go first.
Go for it.
Leah, you're up.
Okay, great. So my quote, and I'm going to read it, 'cause it's a couple sentences, is a Brene Brown quote. Dr. Brene Brown says, "Trust is in fact earned in the smallest of moments. It is earned not through heroic deeds or highly visible actions, but through paying attention, listening, and gestures of genuine care and connection." And this quote resonates with me because a project manager doesn't win trust by saving the day by aligning a schedule better, and a product manager doesn't win trust by prioritizing the best features to make the organization more money. The trust is by doing everything that we talked about today, asking questions, learning more about what each other does, taking the time to do external learnings to get more insight, learn each other's languages, learn each other's tools. Again, being human is already hard enough. We shouldn't make it harder for each other by making work hard. And so doing those little things to earn trust from both teams will go so far in bringing these teams better collaboration and working together.
Yeah, and that really underscores one of the tips that's a takeaway for me from our discussion too that you shared earlier, Leah, which was have that conversation early about what is it you do and how do you do it? What does your day look like? And that's a great way just to start building rapport and trust and finding out what is important to the people that we work with and being human in the process. So thanks for sharing the quote with us.
My
Jill,
pleasure.
what's yours, Jill?
So I went with a Walt Disney quote because I am based in Orlando, Florida. I live here because I'm a big Disney fan. And Walt Disney was a creative genius who is absolutely one of the world's greatest innovators. But I chose this quote because I think it very well illustrates what we've been discussing today. So Walt said, "Of all the things I've done, the most vital is coordinating those who work with me and aiming their efforts at a certain goal." And so it's not just about having that brilliant creative idea, it's how do you make it real? And I think that's absolutely what product and project are trying to do, working together to make this great idea real, and it takes both sides to be able to do that. The other thing I love is that he said work with me, not work for me, which coming from Walt Disney, a lot of people worked for Walt Disney, but it's how do you do this together? It's not about who's in charge or who is calling the shots. It's we are doing this together. And I think those are 2 really important aspects to remember when you're working together with teams and trying to create something together.
Yeah, absolutely. Have a clear vision of what we're trying to accomplish, the values trying to create, and let's work together to make that happen. So I like the quote. Thank you, Jill. Well, both of you, Leah, Jill, thank you so much for joining us on this interview today and having a discussion about how project and product management can work better together and individuals who have those responsibilities in organizations. I love the discussion. I appreciate you sharing it with us.
Our pleasure.
Yeah, happy to.
And for listeners, if you do want to find the written version of what we discussed, you're going to do that at productmasterynow.com/577. And I should also ask you, Jill and Leah, I believe the best place to find information on PMI itself is pmi.org.
Correct.
Is there anything specific you want to call out about that? And we'll also put the links to both of your LinkedIn profiles in the notes as well.
Yeah, sure. So I'm going to put a plug out there for one of my products that we just released. We did a e-learning course around this whole topic. So product and project management, the collaboration playbook. It is fantastic. If I do say so myself, I might be a little biased, but I encourage everybody to check that out and give us your feedback. Let us know what you think.
Yeah.
Is there a specific place to find that, or would that be obvious from pmi.org?
I can provide you the link, but if you go to pmi.org and you search product and project, it will show up, but I'm also happy to give you the link too.
Fantastic. We'll put the link in the show notes.
And I would the research that I talked about that we've done is also available on pmi.org. You can go to PMI resources and then thought leadership to find this report, as well as all of our other PMI research on project management, on organizational agility, on PMOs, all of these things. But the specific research on product management, all the data points I mentioned earlier are all there in the report if you'd like to take a deeper dive.
Okay, so website, resources, thought leadership. Is that open or is that for members only?
It is open. You need to have an account on pmi.org, which is free. So it's just a quick sign up with like name and email address, and then you can access all of our thought leadership research.
Fantastic. That's a great resource to have out there. I am a member of PMI, so sometimes there's this distinction between what we get access to and like. So good to know. Okay, once again, thank you so much. And listeners, again, all the show notes at productmasterynow.com/577. As always, keep innovating.
Thank you for listening to Product Mastery Now, where product leaders and managers gain product mastery through practical knowledge, influence, and confidence. By listening, you are becoming a product master, creating products customers love. Find additional resources at productmasterynow.com. Keep innovating.